Woodlands Mud 7 board meeting for March 2024 to order. Do we have any comments from the public other than me? All right, I'm going to put on my member of the public hat and make my own personal comments. And obviously, as a board member, you can take that for what it's worth too. But when it comes to doing business for the mud and for the Woodlands Water Agency, I prefer honesty. I prefer collaboration, working with our partners, in good faith. And I prefer doing the right thing, whether it's expensive or not. We got to do the right thing. And an email came to my attention this week that I found very disturbing. It was from one of our Woodlands Water Agency trustees, David Smith, and it went out to a handful of people, primarily political activists, and also to one of our own Mud 7 board members. And the email, I'm going to read the email. It says, "Greetings. I invite you to the second organizational meeting for the May mud elections. We have candidates to run in 21 of the 22 director slots. This means we are competitive in 8 of the 10 Montgomery County MUDs. We can increase our control of the trustee board from 2 to 8 votes. The developers appoint the Metro MUD. We have 2 great candidates running in MUD 6. We missed filling the 3rd position. Many of you have helped in the 2022 elections. We need your support again. Since 11 of us now sit on the MUD boards, our knowledge base has increased dramatically." And this is the part that I find particularly upsetting. "The old-time incumbent MUD directors, along with their friends in the SJRA, are planning to spend," and in parentheses in all capital letters it says waste, $500 million of our Woodlands citizens' hard-earned income. Their goal is to create a payday for their friends in the water infrastructure business. So basically, anybody that falls into David Smith's category of old-time incumbent MUD directors is complicit in a $500 million waste to enrich people in the SJRA and their friends, so to speak, their friends in the water infrastructure business. Okay, and back to the email. "This will increase our water and wastewater rates by at least 250% over the next 10 years. And this is in larger font. They are structuring this decision so our citizens will never get a vote." And it goes on. But I just feel like this kind of stuff going on in the shadows has to be brought to light, and that the truth needs to get out. And these kinds of lies need to be called out for what it is. Nobody on this MUD, nobody on the Woodlands trustee board has proposed wasting money at all, much less $500 million. Nobody that I'm aware of is trying to enrich their friends in the water infrastructure business. Nobody that I'm aware of is trying to enrich themselves on this $500 million so-called wasted spending. And so I just prefer that we keep it truthful, and that anybody involved in these conversations call out the lies for what they are.
Are we allowed to talk?
I'm okay with it. You can make a
Public
comment
comment.
as a member of the
Well,
public.
I just wondered how you got on the list of recipients. How does one make
It
the
was forwarded to me.
forward?
I wasn't on the list.
Take exception that the primary approach is to fund it without taking it to the vote.
I think the primary process is to follow the, what we're allowed to do. And if we can take it to a vote and our legal experts, give us the path to do that, fine. But until that's been proposed and we've explored the options, to say that people are intentionally trying to prevent the public from voting is a lie. And it's defamatory.
I was told
Okay.
in this meeting that it doesn't matter what they vote. If they don't approve it, we'll fund it a different way. We're going to spend the money regardless of what the people vote.
We'll waste it another way.
I didn't say we wasted.
That's
another
what
day.
this says.
Yeah, I'm not taking ownership over Dave's comments.
I think it's
But-
more about the tone of the letter than the facts of the matter. I mean,
Well, the facts are important, whether we're going to go to a vote or we're not going to go to the vote. And
I
the
said
guidance
that's the
I was
important
given
part.
was, it doesn't matter what the people vote. We're going to spend the money. We have to.
Money will be spent one way or the other, whether we rebuild wastewater treatment plant number 1, or whether we put Band-Aids on it, or whether we, redo everything in place as is. One way or the other, money's going to get spent, whether we agree on it, whether we vote on it, money will have to be spent so that toilets can keep flushing. That's what that means. It doesn't mean somebody's going to say, screw you to all the directors and do what they want and enrich their infrastructure buddies. And so that's the misleading part of it.
I think we'll probably have some substantive discussion for, these topics under items 9 and 10, so go on.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Move on. Item 3 is consider and act on request for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Items 4 through 7 are the consent agenda, minutes of last month's meeting, financial reports, tax collector's report, attendance approvals and expenses. Jeannie or Maureen, anything in particular you'd like to point out in your reports that we should know about in terms of tax collection or unusual expenses that you'd like to highlight? Questions, comments on any of these consent agenda items? You would like to make a motion to approve?
Don't move.
Motion to approve, I'll second it. All in favor of the consent agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 8, regular agenda now, receive the regular monthly SJRA report from the Woodlands Division. Chris Meeks.
We do have a presentation to run through if you'd like to move to that item.
That's the project plan, 10-year project plan, item 9.
Right, unless you do have any questions, of course. I just don't not have anything additional to add.
You're not going to cover 13, starting on page 13?
Not having an agenda, there were none left. Page 13 is the monthly operation.
They're right here, Chris, if you need one.
We do not cover the monthly operations report unless you have any questions. But I can definitely make a quick run through if that's what you prefer.
Question, page 15. The treatment plant 2,
Yes, sir.
the 2-hour peak flow was 10
Yes.
for a day that had no rain.
Right now, plant 2 is undergoing some work on the headworks, and so there's bypass going on, as well as additional return and wasting, which is causing those numbers to be a little skewed. But it is what we do have to report because it is how it goes through the plants.
Okay. So that's related to a maintenance activity?
Yes.
There questions on SGRA information?
It's page 17. So we're tracking way above plan on revenue versus expenses.
That was 3.3 million.
Yeah. Do we think that'll continue or it just depends on the weather?
Some of it will continue. Of course, some of our biggest demand is going to be in the summertime, so that's when we use more chemicals. But also one thing to note is electrical prices, we did increase last year. Of course, as you know, they are decreasing. So there's roughly $900,000 worth of electrical that we are under budget. And then, of course, indirect staffing is down about 400,000 or 500,000 in poverty. So give or take 1.3, 1.5 million of that is due to electrical and staffing shortages. The other I do hope to make up in the summertime. Some projects like painting's done in the summer, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move to item 9, 10-year project plan for presentation.
No?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. Copy of the presentation we'll be putting up on the screen. But all on, yeah. And then,
Want to just flip through the slides, you're welcome to, instead of turning lights out and everything. Or unless we have some people that don't have the slides.
Got the slides still, available for not having the PowerPoint up and just flip through, we can do it that way.
yeah.
Doesn't matter to us.
I'm good with that. What do you care?
Yeah. Alrighty. Well,
Rather not wrench your neck around with the side.
Yeah.
that's a good.
Everything that's in the deck.
Yes, sir, it'll be right in the
That's
back.
right. So, just to start out with, my name is Aaron Schindewald. I'm a project manager for the Sandstone River Authority, work for the Technical Services Department, Marshall County. But every year, as part of the budget process for the Woodlands Division, we do this capital improvement. Basically, it's a project plan, but some of y'all would refer to it as a capital improvement plan. Larger projects that are not too large to be considered O&M, also maybe multi-year, which would not be covered by the O&M budget. They include R&R funded projects, bond funded projects, both existing bonds and the new bonds that y'all have probably been talking about at length. But and Connie will be helping me with a few slides on this presentation as well. But presentation is basically several parts and a brief overview of the Woodlands Division system, what our expectations are understood to be for the level of service, how projects are developed, and then we'll go into a high-level overview of the projects that are either ongoing and continuing into FY25 and possibly beyond, or ones that will be starting in FY25. As far as the remaining 10-year project plan, that's what the binders are. There's a lot of description of those binders as far as the projects are concerned, their budgets, their schedules. Some even, they have maps or photos showing the project kind of description. But let's move forward to the slide 2. Overview of the Woodlands Division assets. So we have over 8,000 assets in the Woodlands Division between water and wastewater wholesale. These are larger components of the system, whether it be pumps, motors, blowers, pipes in the ground, manholes, things of that nature, not consumables, which are there's thousands and thousands of those in our system. But these are assets. We track them through a enterprise asset management system, keeping track of their expected life, their replacement value, and then the condition of them, and also the consequence of them failing in the system. And that kind of goes into a little bit later on in the presentation. Moving on to the next slide. So it's been our understanding for years and years that the Woodlands as a community depends a high level of service for their water and wastewater service and infrastructure. So as you can see, our theory is, and our understanding is, Woodland residents, they want to have it out of sight, out of mind. They turn on their faucet, the water comes out, it's nice and clean, smells good, tastes good, no odor, no color. And then when you flush the toilet, everything goes away, everything drains away like it should. And I've only had one boil water notice in the past 50 years. It's actually on the resident side where the sample site was located, so it wasn't even truly in the system. Moving on to the next slide, where it says how projects are determined. As I mentioned before, we have a comprehensive asset management system, which originated through a development of an asset management plan, which you see the cover of it on the right side of the slide. But then we utilize that asset management system with the terminology and then the KPIs and so forth that are developed in the asset management plan to track the assets and track also work orders, repairs that are done on the assets and tracking the costs that are involved in those repairs to then determine when is the end of the useful life, when is it we're replacing, and then we can develop projects from there. Also, regulatory changes can occur that would require projects to come up if that does happen. Moving on to the next slide. Over the past few years, we have done a series of master plans. Reports been done that identify what we need to have in the project plan as a result of our asset management strategy. And the ones you see on the slide probably account for about 95% of the projects and the project plan. There's a couple other ones that just wouldn't fit on here that make up the remaining projects. But as you can see, they vary from the one on the far left, which is the big water reclamation facility and optimization project, going to water wells master plan, water system master plan. There's other gravity sewer lines that need to be rehabbed in the next 10 years. And then also at plant 2, there's projects that need to be done there since that facility will continue in operation. Moving on to the next slide. The key focus areas, the big projects or programs that take a majority of the project plan are the waterline evaluation renewal projects, the new elevated storage tank, on the wastewater side, the new water reclamation facility, and the optimized collection system that goes to that new water reclamation facility. Next slide. So like I said, I'm going to give a brief high-level overview of the projects that are either underway and continuing into FY25 or the ones that will start in FY25. First one is the AC Waterline Condition-Based Assessment. The funding for this was approved last week at the trustees using the excess funds that were available. But what this project will do over the next year, ending in July 2025, it's a whole series of testing, data collection, data analysis that'll occur, and the testing will involve both destructive testing, where you're taking samples of the water line, and non-destructive testing, where you're introducing a device into the water line that may be a sonar or something similar to that that can measure thickness of the water line and other properties of that water line, to then give a comprehensive analysis of all the water lines that will lead to a new prioritization of the AC water line replacement projects and schedules and budgets that are associated with those. That's a $1.6 million project, and that map on the right side is a map of showing all the AC water lines in the Woodlands Division system. The next project is that conveyance optimization project. Project's intent is to be able to bypass 5 lift stations just upstream of existing wastewater facility 1 and where the new water reclamation facility will be built. By taking these offline, and also they're removing them, and also their associated force mains as well, which all take O&M and future renewal costs. Study was done as part of the strategic plan that showed over a 35-year period, you'd have a savings of roughly $30 million on all that infrastructure renewal. But in addition to the cost savings and taking O&M costs and those future costs out of the scenario, you're also reducing potential noises and odors, which lift stations can have in the neighborhoods. But this is a previously approved project. It's in the route study alternatives phase right now. Moving on to the next slide, elevated storage tank number 6. Also previously approved. It's in the preliminary design phase. But Woodlands Division is under temporary variance, ACR as we call it, with TCQ, because we are under capacity for elevated storage. So to meet that and then future requirements, future growth as part of the 6 in Pollock County, we're going to construct this new elevated storage tank on land that SRA already owns on the northwest side of the Woodlands. As you can see, additional storage will allow our service area to stack more independently, but also allow for storage for peak flows and fire flows that are needed. Particularly when we have another elevated storage tank out of service nearby, it alleviates the risk of, not having enough storage if you have a fire in that area.
Aaron, what happens if we delay or cancel this project in 2027? When this variance expires.
Well,
Take our signs down.
yeah. Well, TCQ would probably, and Chris can help me with that, but, have a violation against us, that would be ongoing. I'm not sure what the implications are in a
State.
violation like that, but.
Can I follow up on that question? What is the current requirement in so many connections?
Gallons per connection? Yeah. Per day?
But I mean, how many require the extra storage? There's so many houses or units that are served that require backup.
But we're way past 2,500.
But I mean, it's just a state requirement
Mhm.
to have that. It's not a suggestion.
Are we on track to be done by 2027? Thank you.
Moving on to the next slide. South Florida Gravity Main Rehabilitation. So this is the project also that was in previous project plans, approved going forward, and this in the final design phase. This is actually located upstream of the project I just had on a little bit ago about the conveyance optimization. But you can see the condition of some of those sewer lines based upon the TV inspection on the top right photo. But it's roughly 6,700 linear feet of ductile iron pipe, 42-inch and 36-inch. So those will be rehabilitated, as part of this coming up, and take care of that. Move on to the next slide. Plant 2 tertiary filter improvements. So there's 3 filters at wastewater plant 2. Previously, they were all considered sand filters. Several years ago, we retrofitted one of those filters, what we'll call cloth media filters. And through that study of cloth media filters versus sand filters, it was realized that cloth media can handle pretty much 3 times the capacity of a sand filter. So right now, we have to have still all 3 filters in service, with that one cloth media to be able to handle peak flows at wastewater plant 2. However, by retrofitting the other 2 sand filters, which have their own O&M costs and, quite a bit of work to rehab when they need to be rehabbed. It's not a cheap or easy thing. But by doing so and retrofitting both these filters, we're able to then take filters out of service in the future for whatever it needs to be and still be able to handle peak flows through the wastewater plant. But it does not change the overall permit capacity of the plant. Moving on to the next project. This is a project to decommission lift station number 1, which is at the northwest corner of Woodlands Parkway and Grogan's Mill, and bypass the flow going into that lift station over to a 42-inch line that is at Lakefront Circle and Woodlands Parkway. The force main, which was built at the same time as the lift station in 1975, is very deteriorated. Goes under Woodlands Parkway, not in a casing or anything like that, where it could be removed easily. So it'd be a very expensive project to just replace that force main. And you can see the estimate was roughly $2 million. In addition, you would have to keep the lift station operation with those costs, and in the future have to renew it. An estimate for renewing it probably in the next 10 years or so is roughly $900,000. So you can see all those costs that would be associated with just status quo. However, if we bypass the lift station with a new gravity line, you're talking about roughly $1.5 million to do so. And this one's in final design phase.
So 2.9 million versus 1.5? Is that
Yes,
what?
sir. And that doesn't even include the electrical and things of that nature that you would still have with the lift station on top of that. Moving on to the water plant generators. So for those of y'all who don't know, there's 5 what we call water plants in the Woodlands Division system in the Woodlands here. They were originally built just to treat and store and distribute groundwater from the wells that are in the Woodlands. Since 2015, they've also been receiving surface water, which was introduced to the system and blended. But at 3 of our water plants, we have we call auxiliary engines. That's what you see in the top photo there. And these engines vary between 30 to 40 years old now. Water plant 3 is maybe 25, but you can see they're only connected to one piece of equipment, which could be a pump or a well out in the facility. And also, if you have a power outage, alarm goes off, the operator has to know about the alarm, respond to it, and then they've got to drive out to the facility, turn on this big auxiliary engine, engage it, and then only then can you have backup power to that one piece of equipment. I replace them with a generator at the facility that can power multiple booster pumps, wells. You take that out of the equation, you have instant backup power when a power outage occurs, and you have, this is not directly connected to one single piece of equipment, so you have the flexibility to switch between whatever you want to run or need to run, whether it be booster pumps or wells or a combination of both. So this project is also underway in final design. Next slide. Water well rehabilitation projects. So this is not just one project, this is a series of projects that were identified as part of a master plan that we did for our water wells a couple of years ago. However, we are doing projects as we speak on several wells, and will be as we go through the 2-year period. However, groundwater is still the primary source in the Woodlands of water. We have surface water coming in also to supplement it. Surface water delivery is not, however, 100% certain from day to day. It could have a disruption with one feed, so we need to keep the groundwater wells all in service and operation. So this master plan lays out the schedule and budget for doing these well rehabs. Also, as part of that master plan, we modeled the aquifer based upon the new DFCs, and seeing the aquifer decline, particularly in the Jasper aquifer. We looked at what it would take in the next 20, 30 years to keep the pump submerged and what lowering we'd have to do. So if we have a well that we need to rehab, we'll lower it at the same time to keep up with that.
When we lower pumps, I mean, I'm assuming that, the water tables decline somewhat, so we have to go a little deeper. How much? I know it depends on how deep, et cetera, but what would be an approximate cost to go do that to a well?
I'd have to look again. Like I said, it's already programmed into the project plan for those wells that were identified.
And this is a part of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I won't push that, but I'm just saying that can be a pretty expensive process to.
It just depends on the motor, if it's in the well pump and all that different things, and you need to upsize the motor. It could be just a matter of lowering with more column and so forth.
And that's the cost to get the water to the surface too, when you go deeper, right?
That's right.
Now you got more operation maintenance.
More power requirements.
So when they drill a new well, do they just automatically drill it 100 feet deeper than they think, or, some amount deeper than they think, so that you don't have to go in and drill the well deeper? How does that work?
Yes. Particularly like the Jasper, just giving an example, the Jasper aquifer wells, those things can be up to 1,800 feet deep. There is a section, and I hate to go into too much detail, but there's 2 parts to the well. There's a screen section at the bottom, which is about 600 feet in itself, and then you have the top section. That's where your pumping equipment actually sits, and your pumping equipment may be 600 feet down. So most of the Jasper wells maybe have still several hundred feet of lowering ability. So if we identify that they need to be lowered, we're able to lower those. That's the primary kit. That's the primary aquifer that's probably going to get additional pumpage and have that decline.
Once the static water level goes low, because beyond a certain point, you can't lower it anymore.
Yeah, there's a bottom, you know.
Well,
that equipment to be able.
yeah, you can't get near the intersection of the spring section and the blank section, as we call it, for flood casing. You gotta keep it up in that upper part. Because it narrows down. And more about wells if you wanted to know. And then this is where I'm about to hand over to Connie, but new water reclamation facility, that's the last project on this PowerPoint. But phases 1 and 2 identified the need for a new waste and agreement through the stakeholders committee to go with a new water reclamation facility that's a membrane facility. Phase 3 would be for design, start with preliminary design. They'll need approval to move forward with that for, funding. But as y'all probably heard many times, the current facility does not meet TCQ design criteria. However, because we're able to fund the land acquisition, now we have proceeded forward with that process. So with that though, Connie's got some more additional details to talk about in the next few slides.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for having us this evening. And I'm going to hijack a little bit of this 10-year project plan from Aaron and just talk, hijacking apparently. But we're just going to talk briefly. There's been some conversation, right, about how is the bond going to be paid for? How is the project going to be funded? And so the next slide actually shows a schedule of what was originally proposed and has been proposed consistently by Assuray of starting in April 2024. So we brought a supplemental agreement in January to the MUDs for consideration. Really our thought at this point is to try to get $40 million for an initial bond to do that design that Aaron just highlighted. And then we would move forward with the design and the construction. So we would be estimating that construction would start in the fall of 2026 to early 2027, and then have the construction complete in a working facility by the fall of 2030. So some of the conversations that we've been hearing recently, if you go to the next slide, it shows that, what happens if we don't really start the design until December of 2025. I mean, so that's if we were to go to a November election, what would occur? And so obviously the schedule pushes out to where the construction doesn't start until the winter or the spring of 28, and it's not complete until the summer of 2020 or 2032 to possibly even the end of 2032 into 2033. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight, if you go to the next slide, this has a list of different projects. So we're talking about the project plan right now. There's been some questions of why there's not more information on the project plan of other components at Treatment Facility 1 that may be needed. So this is a list of, want to make sure to just read this very clearly. Existing treatment facility number 1 will require extensive rehabilitation soon if new water reclamation facility number 1 project is postponed. This work would include, but not be limited to, the following projects. So if construction is complete after 2030, so if we really delay much, you'll have the series of projects on the left-hand column. If the construction is complete after 2033, so any delay really beyond that December 2025 timeframe, in addition to the items on the left, the items in the right column would potentially be needed. So this is the best timing that we've got on these projects. It's something that if something fails earlier, then we would have to replace them. This is information, and these are projects that would, I think, as one of the trustees said, it would be sunk money. So as soon as it goes in and then the new plant comes online, that new infrastructure is now no longer needed. So if we're fortunate, maybe it's something like a generator that could be used elsewhere in the River Authority, but unfortunately, most of it would just be infrastructure that would only be used for a handful of years and then be decommissioned. So a request, just so everybody's aware, a request that we did have from both the audit committee and the trustees was to try to put cost numbers to this. So where we are on that right now is we're working with a consultant to try to pull together a scope of work and a cost to be able to do that with defensible numbers. Some of these are not things that we have the ability in-house at Assuray to run numbers that we would have confidence in knowing that we're not orders of magnitude off. So that's something that we're pulling together and we'll have to bring to the trustees for approval. So that was a lot. So I'm going to pause just really quick. That's just an update on the scheduling and the impacts that you would have if there's a delay.
This assumes everything else is keep working for that long period.
That's assuming nothing else breaks.
Nothing else breaks
between.
also.
going back, you know, the real ask that we still have is that we're not asking for all $288 million that were in the estimate from phase two. We're asking for the 40 million to keep the project design moving forward, so that we can continue to make progress on this project.
The numbers that you're gonna put together for this are just for some potential Band-Aid type fixes that might happen, you know, while we're trying to get the final redo agreed upon and paid for, so to speak. But will there also be numbers that would say, okay, so one set of numbers says this is what it's going to cost to keep the plant running while we go rebuild it with this new design that we're talking about doing. Is there also going to be a set of numbers that say, if we just keep patching, fixing, replacing what we have to do with the existing plant as is there a set of numbers like that that we'll also be able to compare?
So that comparison was phase one, essentially, of the study that we did with the stakeholders. So phase one compared what would be the baseline alternative. So to continue to patch together as things failed, and continuously have construction projects occurring in the plant. And then option two, which is, I believe, alternative 9, is that correct, from phase one, was the membrane kind of design that was selected from the stakeholders, and we were given direction to move forward with. So the comparisons of those costs were done.
You know, what would be helpful, just I think for everybody involved, because it is so much money, is to kind of revisit that number, even if it, not necessarily go recalculate everything, dig up those numbers that were reviewed in phase one and just say, in case, you know, if you think $288 million is scary, well, if we just keep this same plant and keep fixing it, it's not like it's going to be free. It's going to be what, you know, just so people can kind of have some sense of the scale and the difference. Yeah,
Okay, well,
if there's a
consider
difference,
that.
how much, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll consider that. I mean, so I believe the difference in the phase one, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it was roughly a 10% difference between the two projects. And
Yes, it
given-
wasn't huge, right?
given
It's
the
not
change
like-
in regulations that we know are coming, a membrane system is just a better technology. But that's something that the stakeholders made that decision, right?
If it's gonna cost, we'll round it off and say 300 million. It's not like it's only gonna be 100 million to keep the first one going. So you're saying if it's 300 million to do one, based on the initial estimates, it would be 270 to continue to patch the existing plant and fix it. That's 10% difference.
Something relative like that, yes, sir.
There were also other criteria in the strategic plan, which was level of service, and those have all been discussed in here.
Mhm.
You know, and some of those could be compromised.
Yeah, I was gonna add to, you know, that excludes anything that happens that causes upsets and pollution and EPA and all over our ass.
Smelling.
Right, it was,
Well, not to
it was
mention
a
the
total
odor.
study looking at all of those.
The big
items.
picture.
Not just,
I know what you're saying.
well, cost was
The risk-
90%, 85, not, I forget the cost percentage.
I just think, you know, given the misinformation, it would be wise to revisit those numbers again and point out, you know, what we're talking about in terms of the differences, cost wise, but also, I think Don brings up a really good point. You know, what qualitative improvements will we have with the new plant?
Right.
You know, that we wouldn't have if we just continue to patch the old one.
Thank you. for-
I think that would be smart to revisit that.
It's a level of service issue.
Right.
Question, maybe and I don't have my old notes with me, but I thought the original ask was for 25 million.
Maybe one of the early summertime to maybe September discussions was around 25 million.
You know, that was for the water, if we do remember.
Is that?
Yeah.
For the AC water
I
plant.
assume it definitely
Yeah,
25.
there was
Okay,
no-
okay.
I think that's what.
Okay.
that's-
I was gonna say, I don't
saying.
recall
Okay.
25 wastewater.
Okay.
But I'm gonna give this back to him and he's gonna finish.
Just
the rest
summarize
of it.
it, this, the overall budget. So the next slide, it just goes over, let's see, I got a few slides, those.
What number? I think it's the next to last page.
Slide number 19. So this in summary just gives you for the R&R funded projects, the ones like I was going over a while ago, what the total cost will be for 25 and then for future on those particular projects. Also, we have 2017 bonds remaining that we're able to utilize to fund these 3 projects, as you can see on the bottom. So that's already captured in our budget, or, the bonds and so forth. So that's our existing, So moving on to the next slide, however, these are the projects, this is slide 20, that would only be able to happen with new bonds. And we're still going to have that discussion. And I think we'll have some more discussion here in a second. But as you can see, for those 6 projects, well, actually, the water line replacement projects is about 10 projects. The total cost of that is roughly well under $600 million. And in summary, grand total for the 10-year project plan with some, carryover from the projects from 2024 if they continue on. R&R funded projects for that 10-year period, roughly $7 million. The 2017 bond funded projects we just talked about, a little over $21 million. And for those projects that are proposed but don't have bonds to fund them as of now, a little over under $600 million for a total 10-year project plan overall being a little over $700 million. With that, last slide, thank you. And please forward any questions there. Again, Peterson, PE, Water Agency General Manager after the meeting, but we're still here to answer any questions you might have right now.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move to item 11, receive update regarding status of Bear Branch, Panther Branch, and Research Forest Drainage Improvement Project.
Real quick, update is we've received a draft report from the consultant. We've asked him to do an opinion of cost for the alternatives he's looked at in his modeling. And we expect that probably in a couple months. And then we will be bringing a presentation months to update you on what the modeling can do and whether there's a recommendation to move forward.
I have a sort of a related question. And once I ask a question, we'll see why it's sort of related. So when we decided to do the funding for the Bear Branch Reservoir, there were sheets passed out with each MUD's contribution, if you will.
Proportional contribution.
Proportional, yeah. So since we got this federal grant or funds or money or whatever, are those numbers are now revised? Is that correct?
Yes. Instead
So
of
there's less impact on our budget because of that.
Instead of 5 months funding 100% of the projects, you're funding everything but $3.5 million, actually $3.1 million.
Okay. And so that'll be in next year's budget?
Well,
Is that where that shows up? I mean, I think all of us probably funded that a different way. I don't remember exactly how
it was all funded through your budgets, last I recall.
right, but some were cash and some were rates and each MUD, I decided how to do that.
Two projects mixed in, confused.
Okay,
The Bear Branch Dam modification project.
right.
That was the $5.5 million one. You all had, each of the MUDs had money in the budget last year to cover approximately a half of
It was $900,000,
$900,000, which is roughly half of the total cost of the MUD share. And so the other half would be proposed in this upcoming budget.
Yeah.
Because we knew about the funding as you all were preparing your budget for FY24. We knew about the federal funding.
Okay, I guess that was my question. If we knew about that and if that initial,
we modified it before our budget was set.
okay, I just didn't remember the timing. on that.
And of course, as we get close, we're just now received the contract from the Army Corps of Engineers. So we're just now starting to do the project initiation with consultant. So we've
Good
been
times again.
6 months waiting on contract. So hopefully the prices haven't changed.
We need to go back up to item 10.
Right.
Okay, are we done with, anything else on item 11?
That's right.
Any questions regarding the drainage project? All right, sorry, let's go back to item 10. Discuss potential funding alternatives related to the SGRA Woodlands Division proposed infrastructure projects.
So you have two documents for you. One is 8FI11. Says summary of funding opportunity budget plan. The other one is a kind of a fold out. Looks like a lot of numbers. Those are the two documents that we go over. We've been working, Brian and myself, Maureen, we've been working on putting together alternatives. As I was receiving a lot of questions from the directors saying, well, okay, this is a lot of money, but what does it mean to bottom line? What does it mean to the customers? We did an attempt to put together several different options on how this could be funded. And so the first document has 4 options to it. I'm not going to read all of it, but really this is more to just introduce these ideas. There's no decision we made today. First option is to basically, as we kind of are today, SGRA would sell a bond application, bond issue, and then identify the wholesale water sewer rate required to cover that debt. And then that would be passed through on your water and sewer bills. As you can see, and then this would vary a little bit per district, but roughly around a bill by the end of 2035, the end of at least the selling of these bonds, multiple bond issues over the years, a water sewer bill somewhere around $250 or so, give or take.
That compares to about 100 today.
It's about 104 today. You're right on. Next option, number 2, would be to do a rollback tax collection. We talked a little bit about what that means in prior meetings. Essentially, you would go back to the voters and get their authorization to reset their M&O tax rate. And so the fold out document on the first page, what we did is we put in a little red box to identify, at its peak, what would be essentially the maximum tax rate that would be needed to cover the debt in the 10-year plan. And that would be just under 30 cents in addition to your current tax rate. So that's what would be needed. So and then you can see what the effective tax bill impact would be. And that's an annual number, which was about $1,000 per average bill, which comes to about $83, $84 a month, is what that would look like as far as the impact on the customer. And that would put it on the tax side. And there's, various pros and cons to that as well. Third option is to back more on the water and sewer bill, but to have kind of a flat fee, not associated with water usage. It'll be more just a flat fee. We kind of just identified a starting point of $100 and $200 for residential and commercial. That could be fine tuned. Just wanted to use some simple math to get you an idea of how much revenue is generated by a fee such as that. And that would generate about $43 million each year in annual revenue from all the HUDs. Obviously, if you multiply that by 10 years, you don't quite get to the 700 million, but you can see where you'd sit, at least for that. There's pros and cons to each one of these. The fourth one is one we really didn't further develop too much. It's the most cost prohibitive. It's the most challenging. Go back to the voters. Also, in this case, you're asking for bond authorization. That sets your ability to sell your own bonds. And it essentially sets a cap for how much bond authorization that the voters would give each MUD. Then each MUD would then, over the years, sell their own bond applications. And as is indicated, or what was included in option 2 is about 8 bond apps spread over 10 years. You can imagine that's going to be about 80 bond apps across all the MUDs. Very much more expensive on the issuance costs. Interest rates probably will be worth, at least for that, on average across the MUDs. And so that's something that is probably not really a viable option, but it is essentially how the Woodlands was developed, and many new MUDs would follow that path. But where we are today is just not really an option.
So these numbers, the 700 million and these numbers that we're working on here, does every one of these projects in the 700 million have a 30% contingency fee built in? Is it possible that we're thinking about this as a worst case scenario and that maybe we won't have 30% contingency all the way through the system on this $700 million, in which case it's 500 million?
As we get further into design, we'll have better numbers and the contingency will come down some. You know, and maybe you may end up being 10 or 15% instead of 30, but there will be contingency.
Yeah, there could be, as the price goes up, as the contingency comes down.
Well, as we get more design information.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that you keep the same price, you just lower the contingency. You allocate the contingency to known items.
From an engineering perspective, from my experience, as the unknowns become known, the contingencies go down. As you get closer, as you get further into design, you identify more of the specifics and most of the unknowns. You still keep a contingency for construction items, but it's a lot lower.
I think what Brad's saying is just because the contingency comes down doesn't mean the overall number drops. It just means you know what it is and that number can stay up. That's why you use the 30% contingency. So it may not be 700, it could be 680, but I doubt it drops to 500.
Okay.
That's what you're saying, okay.
Plus there's inflation by the time you get there.
Which we've tried to take into consideration in bigger projects.
Inflation is not included in your contingency.
No, but as the projects go out, we've attempted to.
Right,
account for
even
it.
accounted for inflation is a separate line item. Now your contingency could be, you assume 3% inflation and inflation is 6%. Then that extra inflation can come out of your contingency.
This, based on an average house value of 336,000 in our district.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, whatever that 336, 740. And I don't know, does it, this looks like the numbers are based on an instant increase of 29 cents. It's not over a period of time.
Actually, this actually shows a ramp up, whereas when you do the rollback, you'd actually put it in at the beginning, which would actually allow you to create some surplus, maybe get the district's surplus coverage, budget coverage up, your reserves up
But I
a
mean,
little
this
bit, or
would,
you could buy down some debt.
And right now, the way it's shown is just the bare bones minimum to cover the district's pro rata share of the cost. And the pro rata share was determined, at least in this analysis, based on the 6th and final accounting. And so that, based on the SFDUEs, that was the pro rata share. And then
no, I'm just saying that the 29 cents doesn't happen on Tuesday. It's gonna be over a period of time.
It would be, the way the rollback election works is that the district adopts what its intended levy is for that particular year. So let's say it was 2025.
To cover what
And then you have, if it's over the 3.5, because you're a developed district, then you are subject to the rollback election in November as to that particular rate. So you can't, it's not like a bond authorization where you get authorization to go up to 29.71, but you've got flexibility to go anywhere between 11.5 and the 29.
Okay.
Number, you got to go to the amount that you intended.
And whatever the reality is at that time.
So the thought would be, it would go to what your max rate would need to be, have one election, and then you would have a separate account to put this money into, that would be able to be used for debt service that the river authority incurs, be used for district projects for M&O, could potentially, if you were able to stockpile some funds before a tranche of bonds were issued, then perhaps you could buy down a tranche and not issue as many bonds. Best case scenario, maybe you're able to buy out of an entire tranche and cut those issuance costs. So it gives you that flexibility. The other benefit you get on the rollback is homeowners get the benefit of the 20% homestead exemption, where if you're doing it straight through rates, you don't get that. So essentially it does put more of the infrastructure cost burden on the commercial, which is, historically how the Woodlands has been able to have such high amenities and quality of service, not just water, sewer, but across the board, is from the strong commercial base we've had. You typically see the number of 60% of our expenses at the township level are paid for through sales tax and hotel occupancy tax, which are from the commercial side. So this is, I think, the best way that could target that similar benefit to resident homeowners as we've done, in other areas of the Woodlands.
And just to make everything clear, this is just for the CIP. So this is above and beyond what your current tax rate is. So,
Right. Yeah, right.
The overall impact of the CIP plan.
Whatever it is.
Right. So if you look back at the estimate on the water on option one, if it's, $250 versus currently 104, that's $148 times the L is $1,776. Where option two is, $1,000 per year. So you get some benefit for the residents on that.
So the challenge for somebody is going to be to write that up in very plain English, so that it can be communicated out to the public about, why do we want to raise your taxes? So we can save you money on your water bill. It's going to be a hard thing to communicate.
Build you some shiny new stuff.
Well, I think what was mentioned too, maybe in the past also was, if the MUDs decided to go down the path of the rollback option, that probably wouldn't occur until November of 25. And so there will be a significant amount of time, say that, it'll come quick, to educate the public on, these projects, what we're doing, how to do it, what are the options, those types of things. So it's going to be a pretty significant
How does
public
that
education.
18-month delay for a rollback vote affect the timing on all these projects? What if they say, we're not doing a rollback? Have we just wasted a year and a half and potentially got even more expensive construction projects to do? I don't know. I'm asking.
I think that's why you have before you a request from SRA to consider that first tranche at least, which that would fall under an option one scenario, while you're figuring out how to do the rest of the project. That would be for the engineering to avoid the delay. That's what I requested for you. Not specifically tonight, but you've been requested before.
What prevents you from doing the rollback collection this November?
Time, public education.
Yeah, the deadline to call the election is mid-August. So you actually have to call, it's a little funky the way the time works. You have to call the election before you actually even levied your tax, because of the deadlines and when you get certified numbers from the county. So the thought being it would be a little too difficult to make sure that you could fully educate the community between now and November.
Is it educating the voters, or is it getting the application done by August?
There is no application.
Well, I mean, you got to file, right?
you have an election, but that, I mean, that's not a big deal. I mean, calling an election, is not,
The
that time.
mechanics of it, yeah.
Yeah, the mechanics aren't a problem.
So I would,
Because you could have this problem, let's set all this aside. Let's say you had something big go bump in the night at the mud level and you go, oh my goodness, it's gonna bleed through all our reserves. And I've got to adopt a maintenance tax that's over 3.5%. You could have a maintenance tax rollback election this year. Set all this stuff aside.
I would just think, based upon the consequences of another 12-month delay, there's no reason not to have an election this November.
I mean, this was being conservative. This was being
That's what the
conservative.
trustees of the MUDs vote for.
Definitely a risk, but you could.
Well, I mean, from a cost standpoint, if you delay it, it's gonna cost me.
Think of the conspiracy theories that could develop over the next 18 months if you don't do it in November. I'm being serious.
And I will say, the SRA has asked in the first bond issue, the $40 million issuance, to set aside capitalized interest. So that also helps to pay the initial interest on the bonds. And so it gives the Woodlands Water a little more time to make that decision.
Do the public outreach.
I don't know what's worse, hurry and get it done or leave 18 months for rumors to swirl.
Well, we certainly, I see both ways. Yeah, we certainly don't want any appearance that we're trying to ramrod this, past. We want the voters to know what they're voting for, and we want them to know what this is all about.
When do we think the trustees are gonna? Will each MUD vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not trustee, okay. So when do we intend to have a vote on if we're gonna do the rollback or just raise the water rates?
Our thought was to get this before you. It's the first time you've seen it. Digest it and talk through it. And if it's something that someone feels passionate about it, I suppose you can make motions, but we weren't anticipating that today. But we need to make that
Next month,
decision.
May?
in the next month or so.
Yeah, I mean, with so many contested elections, frankly, it felt a little aggressive to try to push for a decision when, I mean, hey, all the positions could stay the same or you could have changes, but with that unknown, if you did have however many number of new directors, that you'd need to educate on that and not make them feel like they're not getting an opportunity to get up to speed on it. Being a little more cautious on the schedule.
What happens in option two if there's 5 months vote to roll back and 5 months vote don't?
Well, at that point, you would, the MUD that did not have a successful rollback election would have to decide, okay, well, how do we want to handle funding of the project between the other options? Do they want to, do they feel like they did an insufficient job of educating the public and they want to make another run at another rollback election? Or do they want to try to get their own bond authorization if they feel strongly about?
Each MUD could do any 4 of these
Right.
options.
Now, we would want them to be, the goal is to have all the districts go in the same direction, and part of that
And at the
is
same time,
at the same time. And part of it is to have consistency, maintain consistency in the water and sewer rates. That's been a big effort by Jim and
that's
also
since
Eric.
time began in the Woodlands, yes.
Yeah, and
If you go different directions, then you're gonna have different water sewer rates. That's the bottom line.
yeah, and one of the potential pros to going with option 2, particularly for 2 districts that have different rates than the rest, is we could potentially add a penny or 2 on their side and pull those rates down equal with everybody. Each MUD could even decide to add another penny or so on tax and even lower the rates if they so chose. Just kind of, it's philosophical, but there's a lot of different options. Once we go this route, we really want to take a look at what are some, if that's the route we go with option 2. I think we can take a real look at some options to clean up some other things with the water rates, water sewer rates. Create consistency.
Any other questions, comments on item 10?
It would be nice to know, so your pros and cons. Some of them are relative to other options and some of them were just absolute fact. Like
I'll get.
on option two, expect SJRA bond interest rates are lower than individual bond interest rates. That's only relative to option 4.
Well, that's the only other option that has bonds.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's immaterial if you're trying to compare 1 and 2.
Right. Well, and because 1 and 2 has the same bonds. I mean, it's essentially majority bonds. Correct.
Anything else? I have a feeling we'll be talking about this some more.
Yes, and as you're digesting, as you're reading, thinking and brainstorming, send me your notes, questions. If there's different pros and cons you can think of, we'd love to have it, as we continue to try to educate folks and hone in on whichever direction we go. Send them my way.
All right, let's get back on track with item 12 and the attorney's report.
Nothing under item 12 today.
Item 13 is to consider and act upon updated drought contingency plan and water conservation policy.
That will be deferred until next month. We're still working with the consultant and the river authority to make sure our plans and the river authority plans link up. So we're going to adopt those next month for submittal prior to the May 1st deadline. So this will roll until your next year.
Item 14, consider adoption of resolution concerning developed district status for 2024 tax year.
All right, so y'all have the material in your packet, I think. I'll pass down the signature copy to you.
It's inside the packet.
So y'all remain a developed district. Again, the 3.5% rollback rate we've been talking about under item number 10. We do need to adopt a resolution that you remain a developed district for 2024.
I'll propose it.
You have a second?
Second.
You have a proposal or a motion and a second. All in favor? Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. Brings us to item 15, receive and or act on the general manager's report.
All right, just a couple updates. Myself and several directors from various months have come to the Gulf Coast Water Conservation Symposium. Your very own Paul Nelson did an amazing job as MC.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Oh, I didn't get booed. I think that, I found that to be refreshing.
I feel sorry for you.
Very, very good event, very educational event for us. So I appreciate.
I appreciate the agency's support. We had 145 people that paid, and that's about 20 more than we've ever had in the past 10 years. So
Awesome.
it was well attended. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Want to let you know, I did make a presentation with Aubrey and Ed yesterday morning at George's Coffee Club. That was the content of the presentation was to kind of familiarize everyone with what Village Water does, who we are, what our responsibilities are, what our responsibilities are, how that works, what the MUD's responsibilities are. And then towards the end, talked a little bit about some of this infrastructure, just in general terms of what's coming and starting to educate the public on. I think it went really well. Wanted to acknowledge and celebrate an award that we've been honored to receive here in a few weeks. WWA and Water Environment Association of Texas, which is WEET, has selected us to receive the Watermark Award of Communication Excellence at their conference in April. So we'll be glad to receive that. That's something that we applied for, and it's in honor of recognition of the accomplishments that we made in our 2023 strategic communication plan. So we're really excited about that. And with that, I'll pick it over to John. He's still blowing.
Page 49, you got your communications report. Just a quick one for you tonight. I did want to give you a little update on your annual report that you sent out to customers. With the last bill. So as a reminder, that went out digitally and as a bill stuffer. You've got about 7% on that email list. You got about 7% with the bill in the mail. So it's good that you did both. We saw really good response to that. Your average daily visitation to your MUD page more than doubled since those went out. That will, of course, taper off, but still really good response there. We're on to that report. You've got some encouraging stats there on WaterSmart. We're now telling folks that they can pay through WaterSmart. So we've got an auto pay portal. Part of that, it's a one-stop shop. So that's driving a lot more folks to sign up for WaterSmart. So our monthly registration rate has doubled over last year, and we expect that to continue. That's good. You've got some examples of current marketing materials in the next 2 pages, as well as an outreach calendar there. Show you what we've been doing. George's Coffee Club for Eric, as well as some other events in this past month, and then some things going forward. Special attention on that emergency preparedness event. That's a good one that's heavily attended. That's a township event on April 13th at Town Hall. So if you're so inclined to come on out and talk to the public for a short while or a long while, that's a good event. Again, well attended, and we encourage you to come out. And then lastly, you have the option, if you so choose, to stuff this month's bill with an election information piece, something akin to this. Just simple information on when the election is, when early voting is, QR codes to more information, and then a candidate list noting incumbents. For you guys,
Can we give all the candidates an opportunity to list their qualifications or their reasoning for running or something like that? So all we can do is put names that people won't know.
I will say that I'm aware of some media that's gonna, some media materials that will be happening. We can point to that. You check out Community Impact for more election information or something like that, but we won't be hosting that information.
A little hesitant to say that because I want to make sure we point to, unbiased information.
We thoroughly discuss that before.
I think you'd be better off not pointing at anything.
Perhaps.
Maybe. That's the concern.
That wouldn't go out till mid-April. This piece again is just very straightforward. This is just a list.
What's the date of the election?
May 5th.
May 4th.
4th, excuse me.
Saturday.
Saturday.
That's Star Wars Day, right?
Really,
That's the next thing.
voting starts
Oh, yeah.
April 22nd.
May the 4th be with you.
Mhm.
So if you do want to push this out in the next bill, with the next bill, few $100, $300. give or take.
That's all MUD candidates from all MUDs on one
This
sheet.
would be specific to your.
Just
MUD.
Specific. Okay.
Do we know the order of the names on the ballot?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's been identified a couple weeks ago.
they did a couple of weeks ago. They-
Somebody have that information handy for those of us that don't know?
And we can list that for there as well.
So we have 3 candidates running for 2 slots, is that right?
Emily, Marta, and Don.
In that order.
That should be the order they're listed on there.
Correct, we would follow that order.
I think it's great to notify our people that there's an election coming up.
Fine with it. You guys have an opinion?
Nope.
So we need a vote on this as a MUD? Is everybody, what's everybody else doing?
Yeah.
It was brought up by one of the MUDs, and each MUD has said, great idea, and then gone forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's a motion though. It's not on the agenda.
No, it's just concurrence to authorize.
Is anybody opposed to including the voting information in the packets, in the bills?
As long as all the names are on there.
Without any opposition, I'd say roll with it if that's what everybody else is doing.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
All right, anything else, Pete? Item 16, Water Agency Trustees Report. I'll just highlight a couple things where a lot of discussion took place, and I'm going to review in particular the SGRA Woodlands Division had a surplus last year of 5 million. I was going to say 5 million and change, but it's 5,111,000, et cetera. And each of the MUD would get a proportional refund if we chose to ask them for a refund. MUD 7 would have gotten a refund of $359,950. And the question before the trustees was, should we refund everybody, refund all the 5 million back to the MUDs, or should we fund some projects and things that really need to be funded? And let me just tell you real quickly what the projects were. Number one was to top off the emergency reserves. Normally, we're supposed to have 2.6 million per the current emergency reserve policy. FYI, we did propose to put on the agenda to review that policy and see why we need 2.6 million, going forward. So at least for this time, it would take an extra 400,000 to top off the emergency reserve. So that was the first item. Also, as you guys know, we agreed to spend $1.6 million on the AC water line condition assessment. So that was something approved after budgets were set. It's an extra 1.6 million that wasn't in the budget. And, the question was, could we use some of that 5 million to fund the AC water line condition assessment?
I assume these are the same items we reviewed last month in our MUD meeting, right?
Okay.
There was no change. Okay.
Right. Okay. Then just real quickly, also paying for the water line easement purchase in Metro, some new grit classifiers for wastewater treatment plant number 2, and some realigning of
240.
water lines along 242, which was forced on us by TxDOT. It wasn't something that we could have budgeted for. Anyway, there was a couple of people that said it wasn't in the budget. We're not going to pay for it. We want our money back in the refund. But the trustees voted, I think, 8-2 or something like that. 7-2. Okay. 7-2 to go ahead and fund the projects and move on, because they were going to have to get paid one way or the other. Also, the audit committee met and recommended that rather than refund the MUDs and then try and figure out how to pay for these things, we just go ahead and do it and move on. And then the other item that was a big topic of discussion was what are we going to do with wastewater treatment plant number 2? Are we going to, it's a lot of money. No surprise. Any questions on any of that discussion or anything else on the trustee meeting last week? Any reason for closed session? Okay, so we'll skip 17 and 18. Brings us to 19, where you can add or discuss matters for placement on future agendas.
Got it. question. I really appreciate you guys handing out last week or last month, this technical memorandum. Are we gonna get a chance to discuss it, or are we supposed to send you any questions we got, or is there a? Okay, so there wasn't time in this week's for this one's to follow up on this.
Let's put it on the agenda then for next time. If you have specific review items or whatever.
I haven't received anything from anyone, but we're happy to pass it along.
I agree. I would suggest, I may have some questions too. I would suggest email your questions specifically to Eric so that these guys can be prepared if we're gonna have a list of questions for them.
Did you want the agenda then
Sure.
specifically?
Mm-hmm.
That was the,
Technical officially called.
there's a technical manual for the treatment plant.
Does this, I don't think I remember seeing it. Does this have a list of who all participated, who all were the stakeholders, who all were the contributors in terms of engineers, consultants, analysts, whatever? I would, could we include that list for with that agenda item then for next month? I would like, I think that would be helpful just to remind ourselves how many people were involved and what their qualifications were. And if it doesn't say, how many meetings, how many hours, so this is, 20 pages. That's a lot, but does this really give people, does it give us a sense of what went into it? And so that's what I want to see is additional justification for what went into this, because this is a great summary.
It's also a narrative without many facts, many numbers.
Numbers in the reports that are accessible on the.
Right, you gotta go look at the numbers.
And we've printed everything, and it's 2 binders that are about this thick each. So a lot of paper.
Could you guys maybe, somebody send out an email, maybe Eric or somebody can forward it to us, but just has links to all these different things? And so people can go play on the Google Drive and pull up all these documents themselves. I agree, we don't want to print all that stuff, but it needs to be available, I think. If it's out there and it's accessible, if somebody could take 20 minutes and find it and put links to it all and send it out to us, I would appreciate it.
Special.
It is. You did that.
Even better. Okay. Well, there was some concern last week that people couldn't find it. And so
Fresher.
maybe they could find it and just sounded better to say they couldn't find it. Anyways,
If you don't have the link, it's very hard to see.
I would like to see the link. If you don't mind, just send it to me because. All right, anything else regarding future agendas? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.